Hi, and welcome back to Continual. It's another episode of Hot Off the Press, the show about new releases and the authors that bring them to you. I'm your host, Jim Nettles, who is trying to wrangle authors and, well, pull some of those fun little tidbits out. So let's go see who all has decided to come in tonight and bring some stuff to add to that to-be-read pile. So, Layla, I know this is a unique situation, but you're up first.
Oh, wow. Well, hi, I'm Layla Dorine. I write LGBTQ fiction and romance, heavy on the bikers, shifters, rockers, and just about everything else. And today I am going to talk to you about, oh my goodness, Prickly Ever After, which is my Wolverine and Hedgehog shifter, released about, 10 days ago. And it is actually the second Wolverine and Hedgehog book in the collection.
John?
Okay, my name is John L. French. I'm a retired crime scene investigator, having done 35 plus years on the streets of Baltimore and live to tell about it. I write a variety of fiction genres. Today I'm here to talk to you about a new novella from E-Spec Books called The Red Jack Society, set against the steampunk version of Jack the Ripper. It's a murder mystery in which which the detective is looking for people who are possibly worse than Red Jack.
Jamie?
Hi, I'm Jamie Garner. I'm a professional author and editor. I run a multitude of pen names. Today's pen name that is important is Temple Heart, as I'll be talking about. It's a book that's been out for a little bit, but working on the sequel to hopefully release sometime late this year. The powers that be. It's supernatural. It is sapphic, superhero, satirical, action romance, and it's a lot of fun.
Jenny?
Hi, I'm Gini Koch. I write the Alien Captain and Kitty Cat series, formerly for Doll Books and now for Ginger Blue Publishing. I can say that. I write under a variety of other pen names and in all lengths and genres. And I'm here to talk about book 16 in the Alien series.
And El Marie?
Hi, I'm El Marie Wood. I'm a psychological horror author, but my newest release is a Slipstream series, so I'm here to talk about book 2 in that series.
So, like always, we like to kind of have what's the big setup for the book, what's the world building. We'll dive a bit deeper into who and what all is going on. But Layla, let's talk a little bit about what's the big setup for this book.
Well, we are going back to Rock Harbor, Maine, which is a fictional town. It's on the coast. It's a fishing village, and it's full primarily of shifters. There's not really any humans living in the town. It's a shifter community. Most of them are some kind of an artisan. There's no big box chains or anything. It's a very quaint little town. And our Wolverine grew up here. The two hedgehogs that are his mates, one of them grew up in Connecticut and the other one has just moved from Boston. So it's a little bit of culture shock for our Boston hedgehog because he is a very upper crust Boston hedgehog. And he's actually an antiquities locator. So what he does is he actually finds them, he arranges the sale if he's able to, and he gets them delivered to his client. And he's got multiple clients. He's made a business this way. And he's just moved into one of these beautiful Victorian with a wrought iron metal gate that sits kind of apart from most of the rest of the town. And he's just bought it and moved in there and set up his new business. And voila, he's discovered his mates.
Every time you talk about them, every time you talk about this town, I really hope if they ever make a TV series, you'll be able to get the B-52s to do the soundtrack. That's all. All right, John, what's the big setup in this one? I know you've already kicked it off a little.
The scene is Victorian London, steampunk Victorian London, late 1800s. The main character is Detective Inspector Adrian Hope, and his partner is an Irish wolfhound named Grace O'Malley. Actually, it's Grania Amal, but Queen Victoria doesn't really like the Gaelic being used, so she's Grace O'Malley, known to her friends as Gracie. She is a great galumphing beast who would rather play than do anything else. And Adrian basically has her catch people by saying, give them a hug. Adrian first made his appearance in a short story in A Cry of Hounds, The Adventure of the Exploding Airship, and appeared again in A Curiosity of Cats, with The Adventure of the Patchwork Cat, in which he's going after Lewis Carroll's Bellman. This one is a novella set in this world. This world's Jack the Ripper is known as Red Jack. I tell the reader right ahead that who Jack is believed to have killed, and that Jack has been brought to justice. But while Jack is being hunted, and after he has been taken care of, Adrian winds up investigating 2 series of very horrific crimes, which basically make the Jack's crimes pale against what he has to do. These crimes he's committing. The second crime is actually a spin-off of Red Jack, which is why the book is called The Red Jack Society. Variety of people come in. Adrian is when this book starts, Adrian is engaged to a nurse because police and nurses kind of find each other. They're both working at 2 different ends of the same thing. Queen Victoria, this being steampunk, Queen Victoria does make an appearance. She likes Adrian. She likes Gracie more, but she likes Adrian, and he is her go-to investigator when she needs something done by Scotland Yard. Plus, there's the Queen's Own, and a few surprises. Not everybody is what they believe, of what people believe them to be.
Jamie?
So, The Powers That Be takes place in an alternate history Earth. World War II went a little pear-shaped. A lot more nuclear bombs were dropped, which triggered a wave of mutations across the populace, leading to the rise of the unnatural people with unnatural superhuman abilities, who then proceeded to make the war even worse, whether they claimed to be heroes or villains. Eventually, World War II finally petered out. A lot of damage was done in the aftermath. The top heroes, the top villains, and the top natural authorities decided we probably need to police this, and thus created the Department of Unnatural Powers, which basically created jurisdiction and a structure for heroes and villains. Who gets to nemesis who, what cities they're assigned to, when they're allowed to fight each other, minimizing damages and civilian casualties. Thus, and then also using the side effects of unnatural science to basically create a utopia. At least that's what it looks like on the face value. And cut forward to 2020s, we have a virtual utopia. Superhero battles are the #1 sport and #1 national pastime. And there's almost no war. Everything's great. Except, it's never as good as it looks like on the surface. Specifically, The Powers That Be focuses on a rookie heroine and a rookie villainess on their first day and their first battle in Evanston, Illinois, a little suburb of Chicago, and everything goes nuts from there.
All right, Jenny, where are we at with Kitty Cat this time?
This is book 16. And this is the one this one has a cliffhanger, so people were so happy I was late on book 7. But basically, Kitty and company are essentially kidnapped by a spaceship's AI and flung all over the galaxy to save the day in various places. I like to describe it as Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back with a lot less weed and poop jokes. But it's definitely a road trip. You have action at various different solar systems, and you're meeting new people and new creatures and new aliens. And what it looks like, though, is that they're being sent on this kind of by two different entities, and Kitty isn't sure which ones. And she's got her suspicions. And why are they being flung all over? Why are they having to save places? What they're saving are basically societies that look utopian but aren't. And then they may have to, in order to save the this is alluded to in earlier books, that we have creatures that were sent here tens of thousands of years ago, when their solar system their sun was going supernova. And that basically these planets seeded the galaxy. So this is the cradle of life solar system, and it's drifting out of our galaxy. And if it leaves, that's going to be bad. So Kitty and company have to figure out how to fix that while not dying.
El Marie.
Well, book 2 is actually a prequel to the story. So book 1, introduces us to the slipstream nature of it's a 5-book series, and introduces the overarching story of, I don't want to give it away. I'm trying to think of how not to give this away, but of one of the people involved in this relationship being weaponized, and that being, the degradation of that process and all the things that occur that are separate but attached, and it's really the focus of the entire story. But then we get to dive into the weeds a little bit, and so book 1 allows us to meet the characters that are being controlled and tested and observed. But book 2 tells us how those people came to be in the first place, because they're not your standard, like any of us, just folks on the street. They are, perfect vessels that are crafted specifically for this goal. So we get to learn how they came about, why them, and what their actual original story was.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into some of these stories. And John, I'm going to come to you. So let's talk a little bit more about, who we're hanging out with in this story, right? Let's dive a little bit deeper into, what are our people actually trying to do, and, who are they really? So.
All right. First, we have the coppers. This is Scotland Yard in the late 1800s. By the way, Sherlock Holmes is definitely a fictional character in these books, in this book. Adrian Hope, by the way, Adrian Hope was one of the Doyle's rejected names for Sherlock Holmes, so take that what you will. He is just an average copper who's partnered with a very large dog. He's a very good detective. He's not above using Gracie as, well, basically he questions somebody and says, Gracie's getting hungry. She hasn't had her second breakfast yet. Let me just step out. No, I'll tell you what you need to know. And so he's just a copper trying to do his job. He keeps getting these strange and weird assignments. Then there's his boss, Chief Inspector Gerard. By the way, there's a lot of Sherlock Holmes Easter eggs in this, because the first Adrian Hope story was in A Cry of Hounds, which was a steampunk anthology with an Arthur Conan Doyle theme. So I basically loaded the first story up with a lot of Sherlock Holmes Easter eggs. And the chief inspector kind of takes delight in giving him these difficult assignments. While he's working on the first one, Then he runs across several people. By the way, it is a little dark. It's all dark, but this is basically involves the abduction and abuse of children by basically, at first they think it's an individual, but it turns out to be a lot worse. And he meets some of the people he's going to be dealing with in the second book. There is Gracie, like I said, a great playful Irish wolfhound. Adrian meets a young and when he meets a young constable, who's about definitely does not meet the height requirement of 5'10", which was, by the way, the height requirement for London police at the time, but figures this person has a uncle or somebody higher up that just administratively added a few inches. But basically all through the book, up to a point, everybody looks at Constable Fletcher and thinks, kind of short for a constable. This being a steampunk world, I can introduce things that were not available back in the real 1800s, like one-way glass, and somebody winds up as the Scotland Yard's first official sketch artist. And along the way, Adrian's relationship with his fiancée grows. Basically they get married. He has several encounters with Queen Victoria, who for some reason seems to be getting younger. And how is that happening? At the end, after he solves the first case, it is through, and the Ripper and Red Jack has been caught. It is thanks to Queen Victoria that he's given another assignment, because she's concerned that maybe Red Jack was not working alone. And so now he has to investigate that with some increased authority granted to him by the Queen. I've tried to stay as accurate to the time period and to the background history as I could. If I mention a building, I know where it is. Sometimes I make up my own, but the stuff that's not directly involved, they are real buildings. For instance, when I did the adventure of the Patchwork Cat, part of it took place in the British Museum, so I pulled up a map of what the British Museum looked like back in that time period, so I could accurately place the rooms. And the British Museum does make a cameo in this one. But that's, and then I like to think that both mysteries are solved properly, including some surprises at the end. One of the things I get into is not the investigation of the Red Jack murders, but that's sort of in the background, but the aftermath, the people involved in the Red Jack murders are for the most part, actual investigators who investigated Jack the Ripper in this world. The big change I made was that, because I'm writing this, Jack the Ripper was caught, and how they caught Red Jack, how they caught Red Jack. Well, I'll be honest, it's a steampunk world. My initial idea was to build a small automaton, dress it up as a woman, and wait for Red Jack to go after it. But I figured that would be stretching the bounds of incredulity a little bit much. So they sort of go Suicide Squad type of thing. And and then one thing leads to another, and pretty soon Adrian has a task force assisted by the Queen's own. think these are special investigators who are loyal to Queen. So, and I can't taste too much, otherwise I'd give the whole thing away.
Well, that covers the first chapter, so we'll be all right. Jamie, how about for you? Let's dive a little bit deeper, especially since it's the second book. Who are we hanging out with in this one?
So, as you know, primarily, we still follow our main couple, Dr. Peril, mad scientist extraordinaire, with over a dozen evil doctorates of various kinds. And they are all evil doctorates. In this world, evil and supervillainy are literally, you could go to school for it. Same thing for being a superhero. There's internships or scholarships. It's a whole thing. Sounds
like Ivy League.
Her ex-college girlfriend, but now reunited girlfriend, Diamond, who is a superheroine, invulnerable, super strong, accidentally given by the department with their, as Dr. Peril would call it, janky superpower granting machine. Far too much power, and they want to get that back. Start off on the run from the department after shenanigans in book 1. So in Fight the Powers, their goal, along with their trusty robot butler Avery and their adorable cat Moray, who's just a cat, though he is the hero of the first book, just ask him, are traveling in their super deluxe super science RV, though don't ever call it an RV to Peril's face, are trying to get across the country to get the one family member that survives on either side of their families that they care about, and that is Dr. Peril's grandmother, Becca, who is retiring in Pensacola, Florida, which is, that's a place. Of course, it never is anything easy. The department, especially the mysterious Central Division, that stands above both the Hero Division and the Villain Division, desperately wants to both keep a tabs on, possibly reward, possibly punish them, punish our pair for their shenanigans in book 1, are doing everything they can to make things a mess, namely through one of their ex-handlers. Agent Robinson is... she is the picture of young, cold-blooded corporate efficiency. She just wants to get ahead. And her career path has now been absolutely ruined by these two idiots. In her mind, she considers her idiots. And is just willing to do anything to get that back, including, I don't know, kidnapping someone's grandmother, convincing, the Greek mother of monsters after her divorce that people don't respect her monsters enough because they named the International Kaiju Danger Scale off of kaiju and not Greek monsters. That was a big affront. And generally causing havoc to try to bring our wayward hero and our wayward villainess to bear. Of course, in addition to all of those shenanigans going on, there's the ever-growing problems of just how you maintain a relationship when you're two hardworking professionals in two very different fields. It's, no one wants to give up their career, and Dr. Peril still wants to take over the world, and Diamond still wants to save the world. So, and now these days, Dr. Peril feels like she's doing a lot more heroism than villainy, which may not bode well in the long run and could turn into a big complication on its own. But so that is the cast of what is going on in Fight the Powers, which is book 2.
All right, Jenny, who are we hanging out with, and which versions of them this time?
Versions come in the next book. This is the book prior to versions. Well, there are versions in book 10, but there are no versions in this. They're going around the galaxy. It's Kitty, Jeff, a.k.a. the First Lady and the President of the United States. And the AI has grabbed, or someone has helped the AI grab almost all the kids There are a lot of kids in the series now, and they're all along for the ride. They pulled almost all of the president's cabinet. Some of the Martini family members, Jeff's sisters and their family, but not all. And just a whole slew of other people. There are 100 people at first count on this impromptu. There were supposed to be 7 astronauts, and why are the rest of us here? So Kitty, of course, is trying to figure out what's going on. In order to, presidents and first ladies always have doubles. We know that. And if you didn't know that, see Dave, the movie, and it explains it really clearly for you. And so they have a double set, and what the doubles leapt into action. So they get to talk to people. They're like outside of Jupiter, and they're able to talk to, the folks inside the Situation Room. And basically, the president and first lady are horrified because their children have been taken, and their cabinet's been taken, and they're still here. So Craig and Francine, who are the body doubles, are doing a good job of pretending, and that's put a pin in that, because that's going to have a lot of resonance right at the end of Aliens Like Us. So they're going along. Kitty is trying to figure out who's really in charge, what power that be is doing this, and they're running across old friends, maybe you're my friend, maybe you're my enemy, old frenemies, old enemies, all this sort of stuff. They're bounding around, they're meeting new people, like I said, new solar systems, all this kind of stuff. And during that, Kitty has to figure out what's really going on. To make matters just a little bit more stressful for everybody, the AI was sentient, very sentient AI, that Kitty instantly nicknames Mother, has decided that the person who's in charge of this mission is no one anyone else expects. It's Tim Crawford, who is he's been in since book 1, and he is Kitty's megalomaniac girl, and he's megalomaniac lad. And Tim's in charge, and she won't hear anything else. Kitty is communication; she won't hear anything else. Jeff is weapons; she won't hear anything else. So a couple, and there's like five, 6 people, and only one of them is one of the astronauts that was supposed to be on it. Everyone else is just a regular civilian, or so to speak, and they've been flung into these roles. And as things go on, Kitty discovers why the AI has done this. And so that's a nice little reveal that comes later in the book. But again, they're being sent all over the place to rescue certain solar systems in peril, including one whose son's about to die. And they get to spot what looks like a Goldilocks system. It's all these planets. They look completely uninhabited. They look great. And that's going to have some impact in Alien Galaxy down the road. They also run across what Kitty calls Clown Consortium. I can't speak for everybody, but I personally, right after snakes, it's clowns. I don't like them. They are creepy. And Kitty doesn't like them either. And so what's coming. She's going to have to deal with these because she is somehow very, very much against her will, the head diplomat for Earth. This is not where she feels she belongs. But it's working out for her. This is book 16, and she's managed to, not quite as diplomatically as one might think, make alliances all over the place. So, like I said, this is the road trip. It was really fun to write because I got to make up whatever I wanted. Here's a new system, here are new planets, here are new people, those are robot people, and they're sentient and robots, and their moon that they live on is made of sentient metal. So that's just one of the stops. So it was very fun to get to do and drag everybody all along with me. So that's really kind of it. Solving important mysteries with Kitty while making friends and influencing people.
You're very lucky I have deleted my clown background, because that was within an inch of coming up.
My goodness.
I am afraid of clowns. I mean, everybody's like, oh, Killer Clowns from Outer Space is the greatest. I'm like, I could watch 3 seconds of that and ran screaming out of the room. So, no, thank you.
So, El Marie, who are we hanging out with in this, and what can I put up on the background to torment you just slightly?
No, I won't tell you that at all because then you'll do it. So, no.
I'm going to have regrets about that. That's going to come back to bite me. I know it.
Yep.
At some point, yes, absolutely.
Well, in book 2, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, now I know what to send in a birthday card.
Oh, see, you shouldn't have said anything. I'm sorry for you. I haven't said it.
Yeah. Don't worry. I'll find out what you don't like.
Not me. Don't put me in this.
You don't know.
Oh, okay. I'm like, don't put me in this at all.
I'll be too busy with you building the new wing for the awards. So.
Whatever. Well, in book 2, Origins, and that's funny that, okay, it just dawned on me that I call it Origins. Okay, whatever. That's clearly the prequel. But in this book, we're dealing with people whose somatic cells were used to clone the bodies of the people that are used throughout the rest of the books. And so this is Brian and Christine and Raphael. And so we see them in this moment where they don't know each other yet. So we meet them at their original moment of, discovery. And, but there's another person at play here that's really that feels like the center point of the novel, because she brings the psychological horror aspect to this book, because the series is a slipstream series. So you're dealing with, slipstream, of course, means slipping in and out of genre, right? So the experimental piece, I guess, if you will, of all of the 5 books is that each of them have different configurations of genre that I'm going to be using. So the first one is heavy on romance. The Tryst is the first book. It's heavy on romance. It's heavy on the sci-fi aspect, and very little psychological horror. It's not gone. There is some, of course, there has to be. I mean, that's what I write. But there's some of that. But there's also, a little bit less of the action. It's really laying the foundation for what we need to move forward into the next books. So book 2 brings it back a little bit and gives us the psychological horror piece that would have to exist for this whole thing to start in the first place. So it's heavy on psychological horror. It's decent on the science fiction, and pretty well rounded on the science the romance, but less action. A little more action than the first book, but less of that. Books 3, 4, and 5 are very heavy on the action. Decent on the science fiction, pretty good on the psychological horror, and the romance is the thread that stays all the way through. So I'm enjoying that piece of it because I've had the chance to stretch my legs in different ways with each book. So book 1, The Tryst, will suck you in and make you fall in love with these characters, and book 2 will break your heart. So that's
yeah, but they're cloned. You can make a new one.
Make a new one. Just not in the book, but book 2 is the original, so you can't make a new one to those.
Layla?
Well, this is actually a book 2 as well. This is the follow-up to Prayers for the Prickly, which came out last year, and it featured a single Wolverine woodcarver finding his mate in a hedgehog who was a candy maker. Well, that hedgehog candy maker had a brother who was a chocolatier. They actually ran shops on opposite sides of their aunt's bakery. And that Wolverine woodcarver had to have somebody work the front of the house because snarly Mr. Wolverine did not like to even talk to the customers. So his pretty much the least Wolverine of all the Wolverine family runs the front of the shop, and he's, kind of like their little sunshine Wolverine, and he's pleasant to everybody. Until he's not. And then, you find out, well, he really is a Wolverine after all. We go to their story now. We've got, the chocolatier, and we've got the front of the house guy. And I couldn't leave things at that because this is a book 2, and so we have to evolve. They find their third mate, who happens to be the one who does all the antiquities. And the fun part was getting him moved into town and him meeting Oliver first. And Oliver is my Wolverine, and he's going to these painting workshops. And so the two of them, they're at the painting workshop together, and they start talking, and they decide to go for coffee and on Sundays, and lo and behold, found another fated mate. So it's a lot of fun because last time I did a lot centralized on their shops. And this time I got to play more with the town because the next book features the characters who run the toy emporium. So this year's book, I was like, okay, let's get the ice cream shop in there. And that one appeared several times. There's a restaurant called The Wharf. And down at the wharf, there's the Water's End. The Water's End is like a tavern that sells beer, homemade soft drinks, and all the seafood you could possibly want. Clam chowder, all of that. So several times.
So much. I want to go to this town. I love every time you talk about this town. I'm like, I want to be in this town. I want to go to the town.
Oh, I make myself hungry writing the food, especially. And so I'm like, okay, they have 2 scenes at the toy emporium. And each time they go to the toy emporium, see, I'm never going to get to say that right. It seems like it's a little celebration. So that becomes something becomes a custom with these characters. And of course, the aunties from the bakery have to get their 2 cents in and, give a little bit of family wisdom. But then we also introduced this time, there is a tea shop, and it is not just where you can go to get all your tea blends, but it is also where they have a proper English tea every Sunday. And folks can sit on the lawn too and there's all these chairs and they can just socialize. It is a huge social event from all over town. And that tea house is just a huge part. It's an old Victorian house too. And it is a huge part of the story. And then I had to do something for the first time in this one, and I created a festival. And of course, it's my fictional town. We've already done movies in the park where my hedgehog took his candy down there and he did candy that was all themed to the movie that was playing. And so he had his little candy stand down there with all this. He made his own boxes and printed stuff on the outside and stuffed them full of candy that all went to the movie. And that was part of last book. So this book, I came up with the Golly Whopper Festival. And the Golly Whopper Festival is the Golly Whopper eggs are an old Maine tall tale where this peddler went around and he's selling these giant eggs. And if you hatch these eggs, you get a Golly Whopper. And Golly Whoppers are so big, they eat chicken. So now you'll have a giant bird bigger than a turkey that you can raise. And, you'll have eggs and you'll have this bird. And he's selling them to people for like $5 an egg. Golly Whoppers eggs were coconuts. But the people of Maine had never seen coconuts before. So they were, the tall tale goes that the peddler was just selling these eggs up and down the coast. So this town has a festival where anybody who makes anything can sell it, but you can't tell someone what it really is. And that was my festival, and I had such fun with that too.
So, haggis eggs. Anyway, so.
Oh my God. Oh, I'm glad you didn't say that. I'm glad you didn't say that while I was writing it because they would be in there.
Well, it's that time of year where the haggis are hatching. So, all the babies are running about. And anyway.
With the snipes, right? They hatch about the same time with the snipes.
But with the snipes, yes.
It's all about the same time of year. They're just a lot smaller. And they run faster than the hedgehogs. Anyway, so I kind of want to dive a little bit because everything we've got tonight, these are all revisiting worlds we've touched before, right? And one of the things that I love about, the first greatest fun is when you're trying to come up with a new world, new characters, new world building, figuring it out. The next fun round, though, is when you come back to that world for the second, the third, the 892nd time. Is being able to figure out how do you stay within that world, but give it new little flavors, new little touches. So, Jamie, let's talk a little bit. What is it like to get to continue to develop this world?
It's one of the funnest things of writing sequels for me is getting, because there's so many little details and thoughts about all of the worlds I write in, this alternate Earth included, that just they can't go on the page, especially in a book one. There's too much. It's all important. It's important that I know it, and it's important when my editors ask, "Do you know what's going on?" I go, "Yes," and they go, "Okay," and it makes sense. Very important. But continuing a series lets us as writers build onto that. So, like, one of the things I get to do, especially I'm enjoying getting to do in Fight the Powers, is, so book one is really all dealing with supers. Everyone is an unnatural. Every POV character is an unnatural. Diamond, Dr. Peril, both of their handlers are unnaturals, as we find out. And they're, and all the viewpoints are from people with powers that are in the system. Book two, we get Grandma Becca, and Becca's not in the system. She is a natural. She's old enough that she remembers when all this insanity started. Like, not the war, but the aftermath, when the department started and kind of took over the world in its own way. So we have this viewpoint of a normal person that had to grow up. Like, her grandkid, her daughter got involved with a supervillain's henchman, like, came to a horrible end because of that. Her granddaughter is, was an unnatural from birth, having to deal with all this, raise the kid. She is, in one interesting aspect of this I get to explore is, so everyone assumes that all normal people are just on board. Like, it's a utopia. Things are great, right? So I get to explore the POV of someone who, of more normal people in this world, but also those normals that don't actually think the system's that great. Becca in particular found, like, the world's boring now. Like, it's almost terrible to think that she has this thought in her first chapter of, like, man, like, we don't even have hurricanes anymore. Some, like, weather controlling superhero comes in, diverts everything. No bad things happen to anyone. At least that is reported in the paper. Well, terrible things are happening, and people's lives are being controlled all the time. And she's very much against this. There's even an interesting nonfiction bit a world nonfiction bit in the prologue. All my prologues are kind of like historical documents for the series. So first one dealt with, like, the history, at least from the official history. The second one is, like, talking about how, like, there's a small and persistent percentage of the unpowered population that firmly believe that, that this is unreal, to where it's basically become a syndrome that people have, like the natural faith deficiency syndrome, or something like that. I forget I call it, to where it's like, this is a thing. People are considered crackpots if they don't believe, so. So exploring that aspect of the world and getting to stretch beyond, like, this little suburbia in Chicago to, like, we're going all the way to Florida. Every book's going to go to a different state and a different city to cause havoc in. But, we can see the ripples of this alternate reality and alternate history continuing outward. For instance, one thing we discovered in book one is that this is a queer normative world because it's almost a utopia. It's, it's bad. You don't get, it's a thing. You don't have prejudice. Like, prejudice is bad, man. Even the point where there's a super corrupt superhero that is literally like, as his partner has threatened one of our heroines with sexual assault. He's like, oh, no. I won't do that because I respect your sexuality. As he is literally, threatening everyone's lives. He's like, no, I'm too cool for that. I respect people's sexuality. And I get to play with all these things and take these satirical cultural elements to the next level. but they're not things I could talk about to the extent I wanted to in book one. So every book I get to introduce more of this, and that is a blast.
Jenny, how about for you? Because again, you've got the world you've created, but then you get to create new ones in this one.
Yeah, I just took everybody on a, like I said, it's Jane Silent Bob Strike Back, but Hope and Crosby, only less singing and dancing or poop and weed jokes. So it was something that is fun. It's a setup for a variety of things. It's really Aliens Abroad is a setup for books 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21, and there might be 22. I'm losing count, but Ginger Blue basically said, "Oh, do you want to write more? You go right ahead." So after Aliens Like Them, which is December, then it's Alien Rescue, Alien Galaxy, Alien Dystopia, and Alien Reckoning. So I think that's 21, but I could be off. So I might have forgotten one, or another one might be coming in. I can't say at this precise time. But I mean, one of the things I have tried to do in the series from the get-go is I want to always avoid doing Iron Man 2. I use that as my example all the time because it was just, look, it's a bigger, better Iron Man, and there are more of them. Oh no, right? I don't want to do that. There are internal threats, so Earth-based threats, and external threats, alien, other planets, etc. So at the beginning, it was Earth, space, Earth, right? Space, Earth, space. But now I usually will have, it's like 2 Earthbound and then one space or 3 space and 1 Earth. I'm not beholden to make it alternate, but the alternation is in there. So this is very much alien education was very much Earth-based. And so this is very much not Earth-based. I can't remember what chapter we leave Earth on, but they're gone probably by chapter 6, maybe sooner. And I write short chapters. So they're gone pretty darn quick. And then it is, how do you survive in this? It's a super duper spaceship, but how do you survive out in space with 100 people who were not trained for this? There's one dude on board who's trained for it, and he is not allowed to be the commander for, again, reasons. So, and the AI will not listen to him. The AI listens to Tim and Kitty, and that's about it. Now, she'll sort of listen to Jeff a bit, and but she is assigning people specifically to specific roles, and she won't listen to anybody else. If Tim says don't do that, she won't do it. If everybody else says don't do that, she's going to do what she wants. So it's just an interesting, and there's a very specific reason for it that comes later in the book. But so they have to figure out what's going on with the AI. Kitty has to figure out who's driving the AI, which power that be or powers that be is involving this. In the case of their first stop, she has to call for help, but she can't call home. So she knows roughly where they are, and she has to call in people. There's residents for book 9, and so forth. So they're going all over the place doing things. It's basically this impromptu, unplanned vacation, and but it's also this impromptu, unplanned. You need to save all these places, and you have to save them before you save the cradle of life. So, and it takes Kitty a while to figure out. This book's been out for years. I'm talking about the re-release. So the re-release just came out a couple months ago. But the book has been out for 8 years. So sorry if it's a spoiler. But the Cradle of Life solar system is floating out of the galaxy. And if it's lost, that is bad for the Milky Way galaxy. And the space between galaxies is ginormous. right? When we see stuff on maps and it shows you, oh, you see, hey, there's, this galaxy and that galaxy, and it look like, reasonably close. They're not. And so if you leave your galaxy, you're never making it anywhere else. You have to have faster than light speed to get from one galaxy in your lifetime to another. So it's one of those, it's actually quite harrowing if this happens. And there are people in the solar system who want it to happen, so they have to fight that as well. So, along the way, I do a lot of social commentary, usually hidden in humor, but it's definitely there. And it's fun to take everybody to places that I get to create. In Alien Nation, which was book 14, we had a lot of people showing up from solar systems that are not the Alpha Centauri system. Book 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, anybody that's showing up except for the bad aliens is showing up from Alpha Centauri. But there are lots of stars out there, and there are lots of worlds. So a lot of those showed up in book 14, but we're making a journey this to what I would call the unknown reaches, the solar systems that really aren't on the beaten path. If there was a superhighway going through the galaxy, which there kind of is, because you plan your star charts around, what is safe and what is that, and the galactic core and blah, blah, blah. There are places that are really not on the plane. They're not in the area anybody goes. They're not, most of these aren't advanced enough for the bad guy aliens, the Zipporah, to care. So the Zipporah are leaving them alone. And if the Zipporah are leaving them alone, then the good guys leave them alone, because they don't need to go save anybody. So these are systems that are very isolated and very alone. And they're all in danger, and they don't necessarily know it. Some know, and there's nothing they can do. Some have no idea, but they need to be saved. So it was fun to play around with all that and give the readers, a different view. It makes the galaxy seem smaller, which was kind of nice because they went all over it. But it also it made it more fun for me, because now I got to expand our universe. And then, next book I'll be expanding into other universes. So it was fun. And, like I said, it's fun to take people around and see planets that look utopian. And yet all it takes is one bad guy with a gun, and you're not in a utopia anymore. So Kitty and Jeff are having to put all these systems under Earth's protection, which puts them under the Anakusal Royal Empire, which is in Alpha Centauri. So they're claiming it all for king and country.
So Lisa, how about for you, especially since this is a prequel, right? What's it like to revisit the universe, but maybe have that opportunity to explain some of the things that create the universe you're in?
See, in horror fiction, when you write exclusively horror fiction, books are typically one and done. You don't do a whole lot of sequels and all this. I'm hearing you saying 16 books in one series, and I'm going, what?
I'm going to 21 at least.
Oh, so. Like, that's amazing to me. It's just not the nature of horror fiction, fantasy.
Because everybody's long dead by then.
Long dead. If I haven't killed some people off, I've made some mistakes. So, and so it was a different way to think about the story. And so the way that I approached it is very much like a horror author still. So that each story is not necessarily standalone, but the scenario that we're dealing with closes and we move to the next scenario. And so therefore I can have that thing that I'm used to doing, which is finishing this thing off. And then, but the storyline allows itself to, it's all, what it is? It's almost like watching a soap opera. And you have an overarching story that has a beginning, middle, and end that's always running behind or over top of or beneath whatever these small individual stories are. So the individual stories are happening, but all the characters are still existing and interacting with the overarching story. So for me, things can close. And if I think that had they not been able to close, I wouldn't, by the nature of what I write, I would not have enjoyed myself as much, because it's just not my thing to have something go on and on and on to the next book, and then the next book, and then, you know, all the expanding and whatnot. I mean, it's great if I'm not reading horror fiction, if that makes any sense. I mean, there's a point where you have to take your foot off people's necks, right? And so but with romance or with fantasy, you're weaving this beautiful tapestry that doesn't need to end like that. You want to see them go from, you know, whatever emotional state they were in the beginning to some new place at the end. And you want it to take some time. With horror, you want the thing to stop chasing you. At some point, I've got to make it stop. Right. So what I've been able to do, what I like about the book 2, is not necessarily kind of explain, yes, but not necessarily. Because with book 1, you were okay. From what I've gathered, is what I was trying to do and what people are saying is happening, is that they were okay with wherever we were going. It's fine. This is, it doesn't need to be explained. Let's just go with it. I'm understanding that. And that's because the horror was light. So, and when book 2 came and the horror was not light, I had to do some things and then leave them alone, like pull back and give them a break. So that book 3, the horror is not as heavy as book 2. It's not as light as book 1 either, though. But so there is some explanation, but there's just enough to keep the interest level at the same pace, because the romance is not as heavy in the second book. But there's romance, but there's also angst. I've learned these things as, you know, diving outside of my, you know, wheelhouse. I've learned some stuff. So there's romance, and then there's angst, and the angst level is amazing in book 2. And this whole yearning, longing thing that we don't always do as horror authors is in book 2. So that compensates for the lack of, you know, the actual intimacy that might exist in books 1 and 3 and on. So yes, there's explanation, right? But it was only because I wanted you to know why I was terrifying you. Why I felt the need to do that thing to you now in book 2. And you'll hope I never do it again after we finish that, right? And you will not necessarily get your wish, but you will hope that it doesn't happen again. And was that fun? Yeah, it was different. It was different from what I'm used to doing. And I think just as an author, I mean, I've always stretched my legs and tried some different things. You know, once you find your voice, and then you can play with it and put it in different scenarios. I mean, psychological horror can be somewhat quiet, right? But I decided to play with specific antagonists within that subgenre. So this is really, in my estimation, just a different way to stretch my legs, and I've enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. So yeah, I'm listening. I'm amazed by the work that you all are doing, and it's just not what horror fiction does. So I'm just sitting here in awe of you.
As the awards continue to stack up.
Right.
I am working really hard. I'm trying, and I think that's important. I'm trying really, really hard. I'm trying to be the best writer that I could be, can be. And I think that, I started writing when I was 5 years old. I mean, all jokes aside, I really did. I mean, and I psychological horror at 5. I didn't have a word for it. I didn't know what I was doing, but that's what it is. And I've always, said, well, I don't want to tell a story just because I can tell a story. I want to impact someone in some way. And I'm always trying to figure out how to impact someone. So, the awards that's just what I've been lucky enough to have happen for me. It's the effort that I'm trying to put in and the different things I'm trying to create. Like I wrote my first novel and stories late last year. Never did that before. Thought it was cool. I had a great time with it, right? I wrote this universe thing that had 5 books in it that I never did that before. It was a different way to tell a story. And so in my estimation, for who I need to be and what I need to do, I need to try my best to do something different and see if it works. If it does, not everything I write works, but if it doesn't, I'll try to retool it and figure out how to make it work. But if I just sit in my same lane and do the same thing all the time, then I'm just boring myself. So yeah, you're always going to see something different from me. I mean, a 5-book Slipstream series was not something I thought, let's sit down and write that. But I said, whoa, what new thing could I do? So I'm just happy that some things do work out.
So in other words, your new tagline is fucking with mine since I was 5 years old.
There you go. Oh, I like it though. I might actually use that. Don't even play because I like that one. I like that.
All right, Layla. So, since you returning back to the world of your fictional world, and love is in the air, and only two of the romantic partners are prickly, what's it like to come back and continue to kind of build out these fun worlds?
Well, the best part is when I'm writing, I only take the story where the characters visit. So there's a whole town that is kind of mentioned only by location during during the scene. So if they're at the woodcutters, shop, you're going to see the shop, and you might see what happens to be viewed out the bay window. You're never going to get all of the town in that first book or the second book. You're going to see new pieces of the town in each and every book that comes out, because all the characters have different likes, and they'll cross over. Like there's a couple of hockey players, so they'll meet up at the ice rink, and you'll get to see characters from old books when they go there. And of course, the owners of the toy emporium, the other characters will be coming in to shop at their business, so you'll get to see them, and you'll get to see their little ones when they bring their babies in. But you won't see all of the town until the final book. You'll have seen pretty much every building in the town by the final book. But there are so many different shifters and speed and different things that I can do. I haven't even started with the book that goes out on the fishing vessel, and that has actually two of the crew members. So there are so many possibilities for books that the town will just unfold bit by bit in each new story. And I do that with all of my books. My Comet Lake Wolf Shifter series, we're done book 6, and you still haven't seen all of their town. My Rolling Jokers, usually 1 or 2 new club-owned businesses are introduced each book as the characters interact with them. And it's all due to their interactions. So with each new story, they might be 1 or 2 new locations, 1 or 2 old locations, and, a hint of where we're going to go for the next story and who might be in it.
So, John, how about for you, getting to come back in with these characters and world?
My stories are less location oriented than they are event and characters oriented. I mean, I have a steampunk for instance, the Adrian Hope stories. It's set in a steampunk London, but overall it's London. It's not so much what happens in the city, it's what happens to the characters. Now, where I've expanded my I haven't quite gotten into it yet, but I've written stories about people other than Adrian Hope who exist in this same world. In the Red Jack Society, one of the things that's concerned them is maybe Red Jack is not quite human, and so Inspector Abraham of the Midnight Squad is looking into that. There is one story that involves Inspector Abraham coming out in a future E-Spec collection. There's a character who calls himself the Harlequin, who might not be quite sane and might not be quite human, or quite possibly both. He's also in this world, and God willing, he'll be in an upcoming anthology. At the end of the Red Jack Society, Adrian Hope's situation changes a bit dramatically. It was not something he expected, but it's something he has to accept. He doesn't have a choice. So there's a lot going on within the same world, and what I investigate, what Adrian Hope investigates, what Inspector Abraham investigates, depends on what story I want to tell. Now, I don't know when I'm going to get back. I mean, I'll probably be doing, as long as E-Spec wants steampunk stories, I'll probably be sticking into this world. As far as the next long piece, I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting for the story to be told. I have an idea of what's going to happen. I just don't know when it's going to happen. I have a bunch of different worlds that I don't want to neglect. I want to, I'm not so much concentrating on what the world looks like. I'm concentrating on what the characters within this world do.
Well, I think there's plenty of time here to start kicking off that summer reading season and a lot of stuff to add to that to be read pile. So let's make sure everybody knows where to find you guys and, of course, pick up those copies. So, Layla, you're up first.
You can find me at Layla Dorine, author at Wix.com, Rainbow Lyrics and Mellow Mushrooms, which is my blog, Instagram, Blue Sky, and I'm going to be doing a little more with TikTok. And the latest book release was Prickly Ever After. It is alive. You can find it on Amazon. It's in KU, and it will be starting the recording for audio very soon.
John?
Okay. Again, I'm John L. French. You can find me on Facebook, John French on my regular Facebook page, and John L. French on my author page. As far as the Red Jack Society, that's available on most Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, that sort of thing, Walmart probably. But if you want to support the small press, please go to the eSpec webpage and order it from there. They have it available in both print and in EPUB. There's a code that for the EPUB, but please support the small press. If you can order from the publisher, please do so. Not just this book, but from everybody's books. eSpec could use the money. Amazon has more than enough of it. Okay, so.
Jamie?
Yeah, you can find all of my stuff easily enough. You can go to jbgarnerwrites.com. That's my website. Or you can go to my publisher, which publishes the Unnatural Power series and most of my other books. That would be Ginger Blue Publishing. So you can go to gingerbluepublishing.com. Obviously, you can get book one of the Natural Power series, The Powers That Be, to get ready for when Fight the Powers is released. And otherwise, you can find me on social media at JB Garner Writes, pretty much everywhere. Facebook and Blue Sky, where I'm most active.
Jenny?
GiniKoch.com. If you want to join my free newsletter, hook me up. You can do so from at the bottom of most of the pages of that website. I'm all over Facebook, X, Twitter, Blue Sky, and Pinterest. And my most recent release is Aliens Abroad. Well, it's not actually. I had Aliens Like Us has come out, but we'll be talking about that next time. But Aliens Abroad is available, wherever fine books are sold. Ginger Blue actually encourages you to buy from your distributor. So your distributor of choice, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Apple Books. So go wherever, but you can find all of my and Jamie and all the other Ginger Blue authors over at gingerbluepublishing.com. Please do check them out. We personally think they publish great books.
And Elle Marie?
I'm Elle Marie Wood. You can find me at elmariewood.com. This is the most recent release, Origins. This is book 2. You can find the detail and back cover copy on that page, and you can purchase this anywhere books are sold. I'm on Blue Sky, but rarely. I'm terrible with Blue Sky, actually. Instagram, I'm a little bit better. I don't know. Facebook is I'm okay. You can find me any one of those places, though, but if you go to elmariewood.com and go to the very bottom, you'll be able to find my social media links and click there, and we'll connect.
And you can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentialsworkshops.com, creatingpros.com, and, of course, here at ConTinual. And go stack up those to-be read piles. It's time for that summer reading season. You got to do something on the beach, even if it's existential dread. We'll see you again soon.